Hey guys, thanks for coming and watching Squeezing the Plums. This is my own personal episode where I'm going to go through why I've changed Squeezing the Plums from episode 14 onwards and my own personal TED talk and how I would do that and what I would talk about. So, traditionally, in most of the podcasts in the past, I've gone in through the person's childhood and what they've gone through and then gone into what they've achieved and accomplished as a result. Whereas now from episode 14, and as you would have seen in the previous 3 episodes with Tom, with Lucas, and with Lewis, I've asked a different first question. And today I'm going to answer the same first question, which is, if a global catastrophe happened and it wiped out the majority of men, and you were left with a small portion of men, hungry and aspirational, that you can make an impact on, what is the topic of conversation you would decide to talk about and that you feel that you have real world credibility to talk about in order to get the most out of these men? And so all the boys previous to me have given me great topics, and I really wanted to go and almost like TEDx this and talk about one specific thing that I know as a kid I would have loved to have listened to someone else talk about. And that is, how do you become the person you dream of? Now, if you're listening, you're probably thinking, righto, Singy, you're going to talk about how you're the dream version of yourself. Well, you know what? Fuck. If you had known me at 14 years of age, and now I am sitting in front of a camera, talking to this camera and being able to banter and chat with guests previously, you know what? I did dream about that, and I'm okay to admit it. There's a really interesting quote that I'm going to read by Matthew McConaughey, and he said, "The first step that leads to our identity in life is usually not, I know who I am, but rather, I know who I am not." And, when you're growing up and you're trying to figure out yourself and what you need to become the dream version of yourself, you really already know what you are not. And at an early age, 13 and 14, I knew what I was not, or I thought I knew what I was not. And I wanted to change that so bad. And so I'm going to go through my 7-step framework that I put together based off what I've literally done in my late teens to early 20s to get myself into a position where I'm here now, and hopefully I can reiterate the exact same process, the exact same framework to take me to where I want to be at 40, 45 and 50. And so I'm going to take you to my SOS class, which is like geography and history and all of that type of stuff. And I was in year 8, and our year 8 teacher was so hot. Like, she was like one of those Indy 500 chicks that were like wild, yeah? And back then you didn't have social media, so you couldn't really like stalk and find out if all the rumors were true. But at least the whole class was talking about it. And my dad's going to fucking hate me for saying this, but I still remember parent-teacher interview, and my old man he came and he sat down with my teacher and he's looked at me and he's just fucking started smiling and his head's down. He's like, "No wonder why you're paying attention in this class." And I just remember speaking to myself and asking to myself, I'm like, what kind of man would I need to be in order to attract a woman like that? And obviously at that age, you're looking at all the superficial components and forget about all the other stuff. Right now, it's just like, wow, she's super hot. And at the time in the school that I was in, to give you a picture and an idea, I was in a co-ed school where there were, I think, 30 guys and 5 girls. So there was hardly any girls. I had next to no interest from anyone from primary school through to high school. That is, any girl from primary school through to high school. The first interest I had in grade 2, I remember saying to my old man, "Hey, can I go to this girl's birthday party?" And him crushing it, like, "You'd rather go to that than play sport. Are you fucking mental?" And so ever since then, I never really conversed with girls. And so for me, it was like a massive shortfall in what I felt comfortable with dealing. Not only that, I just happened to pick the worst fucking timing in history when Austin Powers came out. So there was a scene where they talk about the mole on someone's face. They're like, "Mole." Well, I had a massive mole literally on my left cheek that had hairs coming out of it and shit. And I was like, oh, fuck. Well, I'm already unable to speak to girls. Now I've got this massive mole that people make fun of, and I'm socially awkward and have no banter. These are all the things that I am not. Like, these are all the things that I am right now. And these are all the things that I know I need to not be in order to maybe attract someone that looked like my teacher in year 8. And, you know, it's so funny now. Like, I'm 34 and I look back at that and, like, that's just a normal girl probably that you see out at a bar. But at that age, at that vulnerable stage of my life, that for me was really fucking important. And so the dream version of myself, what that looked like at that particular point in time was really interesting. So what I wanted was, I wanted to be more attractive, physicality and attractive to women. That was really important for me at that stage of my life. What was probably the most important was I didn't have any true friends. My biggest dream was to have like one super close mate that I could talk to anything about. We'd go anywhere, we'd laugh in the car together, anything and everything. And you know, I wanted that mate or group of mates that were like anything and everything to me, more than just family. Because in my dynamic growing up at home, if you haven't listened to the first episode where I do a solo podcast, you won't know that I grew up in a pretty strict Indian household. So no sleepovers, no like bad mouthing, no parties, nothing. And so, you know, not only that, I couldn't talk about stuff at home because I'd feel insecure and weird about bringing things up. So, and then I didn't have friends to talk about it to either. And I was the eldest brother, so I had no elder kids to talk about this stuff to. So I wish I just had a group of friends that I could bring up things with, that I could work through things with. And I think that was vitally important. I wanted to be liked in general, and I wanted to be funny and have banter and be quick-witted. And I think that, you know, not having that at a young age, I could tell, because if someone had a crack at me or, you know, bullied me, let's say hypothetically, I did not have the competence to be able to banter back. And I think that's the difference, is when a kid is on a similar playing field to you, so let's say you're of a similar age, it's probably not even that much bullying. It's like they're bantering with you. Do you have the tools in the toolkit to banter back? If not, your self-esteem is going to get crushed. And for me, that happened. And so I remember in that class, and this one specific class, where I actually said to myself, I'm going to fucking be that person. There was legitimately, like, there was no hesitancy. There was no doubt. It's like, I'm going to be that person. And all these people that make fun of me or, you know, that sort of undermine me, they'll see me and they'll go, have a look at this guy. And so this is what I envisaged. And this is 14-year-old Steve envisaging this. So you need to take this with like that maturity level and mindset. I wrote it down because I was a bit embarrassed to just reel it off in case I fucked it up any more than I'm going to talk about now. But I effectively visualized in that class that I was going to be a model, that I was going to be the guy that walks into the bars like in the movies and bypasses the line and runs the bar if I want to. I was going to do a catwalk. I envisaged laughing with my mates in the car, driving between different gigs. And I also visualized the handshaking of like all my friends and family being so close together and building a massive community. Finally, I visualized being with whoever I wanted to be with. And if I saw a pretty girl at the bar, I'd be that charismatic person that could go up to them and have no issues conversing and, you know, being able to develop any sort of connection with that person. I hadn't gotten to the stage of even thinking about taking them home. That didn't even cross my mind. At that age, I was pretty naive and also pretty raw. So very, very innocent in those things. And that was me. And I said, right, how do I go about doing that? Now, since then, for those that don't know me, I have modeled, I have walked the catwalk. I don't do that anymore, but I have done it. I have ran bars. I had a music and entertainment company. Um, I feel like I'm pretty approachable to, girls and guys and vice versa. I can go up and talk and banter. I've got the best group of mates who are awesome, who will probably listen to this podcast and take the absolute fucking piss out of me and also say, well done for getting it out there, and have that great balance for that. And I'm super lucky. And upon reflection, I go, wow, I went from this kid that was like all sorts of fucked up in the head and pretty depressed to like someone now that I interview men all the time on the struggles they've gone through and how they've got through it. And it's so interesting now reflecting on myself and talking about my own struggles and what was my framework for getting through it. And so that's what I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with you my framework, exactly how I did it, because I don't know how anyone else did it. I can't talk to you like I'm Stephen Bartlett or Chris Wilkes or anyone else. This is literally just me. And I think it is super valuable for if you want to be better than what you are, if you are going, hey, look, yeah, I'm authentic, yada, yada, but honestly, I want more for myself, then it's possible. It's fucking possible. And so let's get into it now, and I want to talk about it. So, first things first, when you are at the level you are, you need to understand what your standards are and what your values are. Now, they're a little bit different. Values can change over time, but your standards, they need to keep where they are and they need to go up. Now, for me growing up, when I used to get bullied or when I used to really struggle with that self-esteem or self-confidence, my standard was that any person that I meet that was kind or genuine towards me, that I would not judge them for being that, and that I would make an effort to be friends with that person. The reason why I'm saying is because quite often you would see the cool kid at school bully the person and get the accolades, right? So he would push people down to lift himself up. Whereas I said, no. I would, if I am going to be the person I want to be, I've got to set the standard that I'm going to encourage and encompass people that have good values, good morals, good ethics, and bring them up alongside myself. And that was something that when you know what your standard is, no matter how far you grow, and you've got to have the plan and the intention that you are going to grow, that you hold on to those standards. Because if you change those standards, if those standards drop in order for you to grow, then all you're going to be is a big fucking black empty hole that looks confident on the outside, but is shallow as hell on the inside. And so step one is know your standards and know your values, but most importantly, standards. Values, it's nice to know your values because generally your values are your voids. It's like what I don't have, I value. I'm glad we got that out there eventually. And so that has the ability to change because as you grow and develop, your values will change and your voids will change what you don't have. For me right now, if I were to reposition this framework, obviously my thing is around financial stability and freedom. And so I value that. I value travel and autonomy. And my current work as a podiatrist, I really can't travel a great deal with it, although I'm trying to do it now. So hence I'm podcasting, I'm interviewing, I'm doing things that help me step in the right direction to be able to take my career and move it wherever I go. And so money and travel for me are two of my biggest values right now. And not that I don't value or worship or I'm grateful for my friends and my family and my physical health, but I've repositioned them in order to put energy and prioritize energy into those things. Once again, how I treat others and their standards, they stay the same. Now, step two is, can you create a picture in your mind of how your dream version of yourself would look like? So if you were to close your eyes right now and just try this, close your eyes right now and think about walking down a forest, and you're walking down and you've got trees on your right, you've got trees on your left, and you're about to approach this amazing waterfall. And coming out from that waterfall is you in 10 years' time. How does he look How does the best version of you look? Or how does she look? How do you look? Look at the way that you stand. Look at the way that you smile. Look at the way that you move. And then as that person, that version of you comes closer and closer and closer, I want you to reach your hand out. See how they shake your hand. See how they embrace you. And I want you to start to get a feeling of that. And then I want you to start to get a feeling of, what kind of person does this look like and feel like when you stand in their presence? Do they feel confident or calm or certain or dominant or strong? And then when they open their mouth and talk to you and tell you that you're on the right path, just listen to what they say. For every single person, they're going to say something different. But generally, it's uplifting. Take that, turn around, walk back through the forest, and open your eyes. That little exercise is normally done way more in depth and way more in detail. However, visualization is one of the most important things when it comes to being able to reach towards your dream goal. If you cannot visualize it, if you cannot potentially even see it, and you cannot feel it, then it is very hard to know what direction in order you should move. And so for some people, let's say you're a young skinny guy, you might have, walked towards that waterfall and out came this big motherfucking Adonis, right? Cool. You value that. You want the physicality. That's great. No stress. Don't worry about it. People call it vanity. Fuck it. Doesn't matter. It's okay. You might be a female listening to this and you just see this feminine, easygoing, hair flowing through the air lady walking towards yourself. Calm, confident, and sure of herself. Awesome. Maybe that's mirroring currently what you're not. And therefore, these are the things that once you know what you're not, you can work towards what you want to be. The third thing is, and the third step of the framework is, ask yourself why you want this. It's really important to be aware of what you lack and the emotion it creates within yourself. Because at the end of the day, you need to have the capacity to be able to turn the emotion that your lack creates into a different emotion so that lack no longer changes the way that you are in day-to-day life. And so by doing that, the byproduct of it is that you start to be in a much different energy and frequency. Now, if you know how the lack affects your emotions, you then also can figure out what characteristics are required to be able to solve the lack that you currently have. So, real world case. My issue was being able to banter with people. I was very stiff. I could speak to adults, but I couldn't speak to kids. I couldn't banter, move quickly. And so the characteristic I needed was humor. I needed to learn that. Like, I was boring. And so I remember when I went to university, one of my best mates to date, I used to sit with him to university all the time because we lived in the same area. And he is the funniest prick ever. Like, anyone that meets him they're like, who the fuck is this guy? Fuck, he's funny. And I literally spent, I reckon my 4 years in the car with him were almost better than my 4 years going to university, because, and he'll get a big head for that. But, and that's because I learned how he spoke, he operated, his body language was. And I took bits of that and applied it to myself on the provision that I kept my same standards and it was moving in towards the direction of human I visualized and saw for myself. And so if you understand what you lack, you then know what characteristic you need. You then need to know what environment you have to put yourself in order to grow that. Because sometimes it's not like you can just read a book. You need to be able to see it, you need to feel it, and you need to be able to do it. Now, the next step after that, step 5, okay, is you need to think about if you can write down how this person would feel. This is the mirror to your mind. So you write down all this stuff, you literally see it, and you go, I am hilarious. I am funny. To be funny, I should do. whatever it is. Now, by writing this down, you absorb it and you look at it and it reflects. And all of this stuff allows for you to be able to gain a good insight in terms of what is it actually and tangibly you want to do. A lot of people want to go, I want to be big and strong. It's like, great, awesome. You want to be big and strong. Well, you need to actually write down, I want to be big and strong. I want to feel like the person that enjoys going grocery shopping for healthy food and loves going to the gym because he gets and enjoys a great pump. Now, all of a sudden, that in-depth knowledge there starts to paint the picture of what is required and what characteristics are required to be able to achieve the goal. And because you've written it down, it makes such a big difference upon remembering and then reviewing as you grow in your journey. Because as you grow, you want to be able to retrace back to where you've come from in order to make sure that, you've had substantial growth and that you can celebrate that substantial growth. Now, the caveat to this as well, and this is something that, a lot of people don't do, is as they make a plan to grow, they don't make a plan to pick up on what are the versions of themselves that could come out that they don't want to see. This is called shadow work. So effectively, that's the part of you that exists within you that you suppress because you don't deem it a version of you that anyone should see or you should see of yourself. And so as your body and your mind and your heart grows, you need to be able to figure out with yourself what are the shadow versions of yourself that might come out that you should become aware of. So let's say, for instance, you become bigger in the gym, and I talk about this all the time, right? You want to get strong. The shadow version of that is, well, they're two opposites. One shadow is like you're the weakling, right? So that might be where you are. You're not strong, so you substitute that with like being vindictive and like being a keyboard warrior, let's say. But on the other hand, you have the tyrant, which is someone who is like sabotages people, who like might be narcissistic, physically brutal, like pushes their power and uses their power to degrade others or push themselves above others. And so by being aware of either end of the spectrum, you are really helping yourself grow in a way which is in accordance to your standards. And that's massive because it means that when you're aligned to your standards and to your values, your sense of feeling whole remains the same. And don't get me wrong, there are going to be times where the shadow versions of yourself comes out, and that's fine. Let's say it's being a better partner. So you might have had a bunch of shit relationships and you go, okay, I know the characteristic I need to be in a better relationship is to make sure that I stop meeting people that I'm trying to fix. And in order to do that, you might start to date a little bit differently. And to do that, you might have to be aware and change the way that you date. Now, let's say you started dating a new girl, she rocks your boat. You pick her up and you're like, this is fucking awesome. What are the shadow versions of yourself that might come out as a result of being in a new relationship? They might be that you develop insecurity because you're worried of losing her, because now you finally found the quote unquote one. Or it might be jealousy because now all of a sudden someone speaks to your partner and you get that heavy layer of jealousy. Or the other thing might be that you go, well, to maintain control in the relationship, I need to be aloof and stay away so that she still thinks that she needs to get my validation. Because now I've met someone that I finally feel a connection with, this other version of you might play out. And it seems so weird that these versions come out, but they're in all of us. And so if you're aware that all these versions of you are you, and you just need to choose and be aware of what versions of you come out, you're effectively mastering what's called shadow work. And I think that is one of the most important things to do. The last two steps of this framework and things that I've done personally is action the above and build a body of evidence to produce better thoughts and instill belief. So One thing is to write down stuff and to say you're going to do stuff and write down, what your standards are and visualize and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, you got to do the work. And we all know this. So by doing the work, even if it's a small amount of work, by completing it, you build a body of evidence that you can retrace back to, that you can go, I did that. I was aware of that. I picked myself getting angry. Or you get road rage. I stopped myself from just reacting stupidly. I'm overcoming that loop that I'm constantly in. And constantly building a body of evidence is how we get to where we are or where we have been previously to where we want to be. Because the iterations of yourself that you develop in the process are all incredibly important to making sure that you don't just go up and then fall straight back down. Rather, if you have a little hiccup in the road, you only drop back one step and then you keep moving forward. And that's because you've tracked yourself along the way and you've built a body of evidence to say, well, if you've had a hiccup, you've done 99 other things fucking really well that you can forgive yourself for one little hiccup. Let's move forward, as opposed to anything else. Now, the final thing is reflection and understanding your ego, your sense of self. Your values will change and transform on this journey. And this is sort of like, out of the 7 steps, this is sort of the circle that encompasses all of these steps. Your ego, your sense of self will change throughout this journey. And so as you're changing, you need to be aware of the changes that are being made and how you view the changes that are being made to yourself. If you're in alignment with those changes and you're in alignment with your values and you're in alignment with your standards, as you continually change, then you know that the growth that's happening is real. And you also know that you give yourself permission to slightly change along the way. And this is the thing. If you're a 14-year-old guy like I was, and I value and I see this thing that I'm not and I want to be there, by the time I'm 17, if I've made, some changes in that 3 years, all of a sudden I go, that came from a place of lack. I actually really just want to have a meaningful relationship, some good mates. I don't need to be fucking XYZ. I don't need to prove that I'm, attractive, or I need to, work at a bar and do this or that. I actually just want to be able to have these things in my life, and those things were just, not relevant to the way I was. And so then you can change. And that over-encompassing sense of self is a way for you to be able to make sure you tune into that. Now, that 7-step framework, like I said, is what worked for me. I got to a stage where I was running the bars. I felt confident in front of women. I can talk to camera. I could, model, whatever. I ran a business. I felt that I was in a good place of security with friendships and family. And I could have the best friendships and the best families. And to be honest with you, if I look at a close group of my mates, the main introduction that's happened between all those mates is me. And that's really cool because that's a standard that I set for myself that, everyone's going to be different from different places, have different opinions. But if their intention behind being a good person towards you is there, then that's enough for you to be a friend. And you should never, ever be the bully to anyone else based off your interpretation of the way you think that they are. And now the next part of me, as I said earlier, was around building the framework for what's to come. And I really look forward to sort of sharing this in another podcast, because it's one thing to say, hey, look where I've come to. It's another thing to say, this is exactly how I've set out where I am now and where I want to be. And so that's quite a large and extensive episode that I'll go into over time. But all I want to say is that on this journey of solo podcasting, interviewing other people, your feedback is what's going to be really important for me to make sure that the content I'm delivering and the way that I'm delivering it hits home for you. So if you found this podcast beneficial, if you found it that you go, 0.4 or 0.6, that was cool, let me know, because I'm hoping that as this podcast grows and as we get more followers and more traction, that we can genuinely change people's lives in a positive way. And bringing this stuff to the surface and me being vulnerable and sharing my stories, which, it's not ideal to say that I had a crush on my grade 8 teacher and she was super hot and all this type of stuff. Like, that's not good. But, I'm sure that there are people that might have a crush on a work colleague and feel wildly insecure because they don't want to look like a creep, or they don't know how to go about speaking to a girl, and they want to improve a version of themselves. There's a lot of that out there. So, your feedback will be great. Your support of this channel up until now, episode 17, has been amazing. The road and the journey to 21 episodes, which is 1% of podcasts for each 21, is almost there. And then, for the rest of 2024, we hope to really get out a great amount of content to start to boost the idea of how important it is to talk about men's emotional and physical relationship with themselves, and also how they navigate through uncomfortable situations so that they feel like they can talk to people about it and they can grow from it. So anyways, thank you for listening to episode 17, and I look forward to our very next episode.